Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarane Trinadapi Sunichena Taradeva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Harinama Harinama Harinamai Vakevalam Kalo Nastyeva 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 Gatiranyata. May the month of Kartik, Lord Damodar, bless you. Tonight is a very auspicious night. Tonight, Krishna dances the Rasa Leela. But for now, we're going to study Bhagavd-gita. We are continuing our Kundan Loka Bhagavd-gita seminar. We've already done parts 1 and 2. We are now in part 3, chapter 3. We will pick up the section where it says 17 through 19, the position of a self-realized soul. We will begin by chanting the 12-syllable mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, as you see, I have taken all the chapters and broken them out into subsections. So we pick up now verses 17 through 19, the position of a self-realized soul. Please follow along. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty." So let's stop there and let's explain. So the self, Atma, in this context refers to the soul. The Atma or self can sometimes mean the body, it can mean the mind, but the context here is the soul. So, one who takes pleasure in the soul. When you take pleasure in the soul, you are not taking pleasure with the gross sense gratification of the material world. The pleasure of the soul, or the pleasure of the self, is known as bhakti, devotional service. That is how the soul takes pleasure. Since the soul is part and parcel of Krishna, and since the soul, by constitution, is meant to render service to Krishna, that is how the soul actually takes pleasure. It is by rendering service to the Supreme Soul. We are all souls, but we are not the Supreme Soul. We are soul or self, but Krishna is the Supreme Soul or the Supreme Self. And our constitutional position is to render service to Krishna, and that is how we will take pleasure. The non-devotee tries to take pleasure by enjoying the material senses apart from Krishna's satisfaction. The devotee enjoys or takes pleasure by rendering service to Krishna. Just like what you're doing tonight. You have come here, you're going to engage your mind and your sense of hearing, and by using them in Krishna's service, you will enjoy in that way. The non-devotees are out, they're watching television, they're going to some event, they're trying to enjoy their senses. You are also going to enjoy your senses, but you're going to do it by means of devotional service. Then the next phase, whose human life is one of self-realization. So, most people, they're not interested in self-realization. Later on in chapter 7, Krishna will point out that out of thousands among persons, maybe one is interested in self-realization. So a devotee like you are interested in self-realization. So as your ultimate purpose of life, it is self-realization. And then it says, who is satisfied in the self only. Meaning, that's a self-realized soul, no longer trying to enjoy the material world, is convinced that self-realization is the primary objective of life, and therefore an advanced devotee only does devotional service. Then it said, fully satiated. You cannot be fully satiated on the material platform. We learned that a little bit in chapter 2, when it talked about we contemplate the objects of the senses, we develop attachment for them, and from that attachment we develop lust. But lust will eventually turn to frustration and anger. So chasing the material objects of the senses, you cannot become satiated. And we will learn more of that in this chapter when we get to the section on lust. We're going to come to that section tonight. So there is no satiation in sense gratification, in material life. If that were the case, everyone would be happy in the material world. But you don't find very many people happy in the material world. Mr. Trump right now is not very happy because he's not self-realized and he's not doing devotional service. Yes. So, on the material platform, on the platform of sense gratification, it is impossible to find satiation. It cannot exist because that's how Krishna has set up this material world. But if you're a devotee and you're deriving pleasure from devotional service or enjoying the self, you can find satiation. So therefore, Krishna says, therefore, for such a person there is no duty. Why? Because such a person is already doing the topmost religion. People have to do prescribed duties in the material world. That was the previous section on this chapter, which we studied at your house. We studied how there's this cycle of sacrifice, and that if you don't offer everything to Vishnu, you become entangled. And it also talked about how if you don't offer your food to God, if it's not a sacrifice, you're only eating sin. So that whole section was about engaging everything for the satisfaction of Krishna, or in the direct sense, Vishnu. So duties, why we have duties, we also talked about that. You even asked a nice question, I remember. What are the duties? You have to have duties. Without duties, it's animal life. There has to be duties. Just like as your children are growing up, you're going to give them duties. You're going to have to do that. Otherwise, they will grow up to be spoiled. Right? Every parent does that. Every parent, little by little, gives their children responsibilities. That's how they grow. I'm sure your parents did that with you. Yes, especially in Hindu families. Because in Hindu families, by and large, they bring up their children properly. But if you are on the platform of devotional service, you already are on the topmost platform, so you have nothing else you have to do. When you're engaged in the topmost duty, there's nothing better. That answers another question. The question arises, say I'm a devotee and I commit some sin or I fall down. What should I do? Very simple. Get back into doing devotional service, because that's the topmost atonement. There's no need for a devotee to do any kind of atonement other than resume devotional service. So that's all you have to do. Oh, you wake up one morning, I've committed some mistake, I realize I'm fallen. No need to get excited. Start chanting. Start coming to the temple. Start reading Bhagavd-gita. Just resume your activities. Say you're in a race. You see on the Olympics, they're racing. Sometimes they fall down. You're in the race, pick up, get going. That's all. Nothing, no need to do anything else. Just pick yourself up, keep going. All right? So, that's why we chant Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. That's it. If you learn one mantra, it suffices. It covers everything. The answer to all questions, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. That's it. All right, let's continue. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties. Yes, most people, they're doing their prescribed duties with some intention in mind. But a self-realized person, no. He's doing his prescribed duties only because they should be done. Later on, in the next section, he will do his prescribed duties to set an example for others. But he's also doing his prescribed duties in order to become more self-realized. That's why we do. Why do we chant? To become self-realized. Why do we do arti? To become self-realized. Why do we do different, like this is the month of Kartik, so some devotees are doing lots of austerities. But for what purpose? To become more Krishna conscious, to become self-realized. They have no other intention. Okay, a self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work. Yes, a devotee is not lazy. It's not that when I become a devotee, I become lazy. No, I'm active, but I'm active on the platform of self-realization. I'm active on the platform of engaging in Krishna consciousness. Nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. When you're a devotee, your ultimate dependence is Krishna. That's your ultimate dependence. That's the mark of a surrendered soul. And that's one of the 6 items of surrender, Sharanagati. The devotee realizes, I have no other shelter other than Krishna. Prahlad, when he was tortured by his father, just took shelter of Krishna. That's all. What else is there to do? The other Sunday, I read at Radharaman, story of Haridas Thakur being whipped and beaten in 22 marketplaces. He took shelter of Krishna. That's the mark of a devotee. Just take shelter of Krishna. Prabhupada is on the boat going from India to America. He has 2 heart attacks. He takes shelter of Krishna. He comes to America for 1 year, depending on Krishna. Doesn't have any money, doesn't have any big sponsor sponsoring him. He's depending on Krishna. That's the mark of a surrendered soul. They're dependent on Krishna. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. That's the mode of goodness. I was mentioning that this morning in New Dwarka. Mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is, I do things because that's what I'm supposed to do. Just like the policeman. Once the policeman has the uniform and he's on duty, then he has to do things the way that he has been trained. He can't just do whatever he wants. Technically, even if he's going to use his weapon, there's a whole guideline. You can't just, somebody's stealing, boom, boom. No. You have to know when you are allowed to use lethal force. But nowadays, it's not like that. Now they're just, you look like a, okay, shoot. But supposedly, it's supposed to be, there's a guide that in this situation, you don't use lethal force, you do this tactic. So a devotee does things simply because this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to rise early in the morning. I'm supposed to take bath in the morning. I'm supposed to worship the deity. I'm supposed to chant on the beads. I'm supposed to, like this month, I was explaining, the month of Kartik. So there are austerities. No urd dal, no masura dal, and other things. Some devotees, they take on more austerity. Or say Ekadasi. The duty of Ekadasi, no grains, no beans. Why? Because that's the duty. That's the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is that same thing, Parikshit. After Parikshit heard that you're going to die in 7 days, the first thing he asked himself, okay, what's my duty now? What am I supposed to do now? He sat on the bank of the Ganges. The great sages and rishis came. What did he ask them? O sages, I have 7 days. What is my duty now? Then Shukadev came, and everybody said, Shukadeva will answer your question. Shukadev said, yes. What's your duty now? Hear this Srimad Bhagavatam. For 7 days, 7 nights now, you only have 7 days. Now you simply hear. That's all. Hear this Bhagavatam. And what's Shukadev's goal? Shukadev's goal is, by the end of my recitation, you'll be ready. And he says, towards the end, Shukadev tells Parikshit, you're not even going to notice that the snake bird is killing you. Because by my instructions, you're going to be so absorbed in Krishna, you're not even going to be aware that the snake bird is killing you and your body is burning up in flames. You're not even going to be aware of it. You're going to be in samadhi. Shukadev was expert spiritual master. He told him that. Don't worry. You're not even going to know about it. Pretty good. I don't know if I'm on that stage. Right? But that's the powerful message of Shukadev, preparing him how to enter the stage of full samadhi. Don't attach to the fruits of activities. The non-devotees, they're very attached to the fruits of their activities. Extremely attached. I didn't get my raise this time. We hear that. I didn't get my raise. Why? Because they're attached to the fruits of their activities. Devotee is not attached. The devotee does his activities. Whatever Krishna gives as prasad, I'm happy. That's all. I do my service. Whatever Krishna gives me as prasad, Haribol. Prahlad, his mother, on the order of the husband, poisoned the food. What did Prahlad do? He offered it. He offered it, ate it. The poison didn't act. Krishna protected him. Okay. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. So again, the supreme is different for different people. For Hillary and Trump, what's the supreme? I get elected. That's their supreme. For a businessman, supreme, bakshish. Give me money, 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 sweeter than honey. Yes, give me big government contract. Right? So I can charge them $1,000 for a screw. You've heard about that, haven't you? Some of these companies, they send the bill, one hammer, $10,000. And nobody's checking. Yeah? All right, so for a karmi, his supreme is, let me go to heaven. That's the supreme for the karmis. Or go to the Pitri Loka, where I can enjoy, provided my ancestors, not my ancestors, the ones after me, they can do this Shraddha ceremony every year so I can stay in the heavenly planets. That's how he can stay. For the yogi, his supreme, realize Paramatma. For the jnani, the supreme is to become one with the Brahman, to become one with God. But for the devotee, what is the supreme? Go back home, back to Godhead. And what will he do there? Same thing he's doing now. Devotional service. There's not going to be any different. You read the description of Damodar Leela. Mother of God, Yashoda, what is she doing? Churning. What? Yeah. The Mother of God is also working. Not that the Mother of God, serve me, fan me, wash my... No. The Mother of God, she's churning the butter. People think, I'm going to go to heaven, I'm going to go to God, and I'll just lay down on a bed and everyone will bring me sherbet. And no, the Mother of God is working. The gopis, what are the gopis doing? They're getting up early in the morning, taking care of the cows, cooking. In that book, Govinda Lilamrita, early in the morning, Yashoda calls Radharani from her house, from Jatila, her mother-in-law's house. She sends some gopis, go get Radharani because she's the best cook. I want my Krishna to have the best breakfast. So Yashoda is cooking, Danishta, Rohini, Radharani. They're making a big breakfast, so they're working hard. They're perspiring. You know, if you work in the kitchen, right? It's hard work, right, ladies? It's hard work. No, it's not hard work. I think it's hard. I know if I work in the kitchen, I get tired. So they make this elaborate breakfast for Krishna. They're working. So whether it's here or in the kingdom of God, same thing. You're going to work, but it's devotional service. You're working for Krishna. So the devotee, that's the same thing. You're here, you're doing service. There, you're going to do service. All right, let's go to the next section. Next section is verses 20 and 21, entitled, Setting the Example. Let's read it together, okay? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said together, Kings such as Janaka attained perfection solely by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So Janaka, you all know who is Janaka, father of Sita, right? So he achieved perfection simply by doing his prescribed duties as a saintly king. Then it said, just for the sake of educating the people. In other words, set a good example. Devotees should set a good example. I told you the story many times. My wife, one day her boss called her in, said to her, close the door. So usually when you hear that from the boss, that's not a good sign. That means you're going to get chastised or fired. So the boss said to my wife, I'm very disappointed in you. My wife was like, I don't know what's happening. She said, the boss said, I'm very disappointed to you because I just found out you're a Hare Krishna devotee. My wife said, yes. He said, I hate Hare Krishna devotees, but I like you. Now I have to no longer hate Hare Krishnas because you're so nice. So my wife never preached to her. My wife didn't do anything, but she was such a good person, good worker, nice. She stood out amongst all the other workers. So that when he heard that, what? She's a Hare Krishna? What? How can that be? So just by her good example, she was able to change the heart of that Ravana, whatever his name was. Yes. So just even by her good example. Even Prabhupada, he didn't always say Hare Krishna. Sometimes on his morning walk, he would see somebody, he would say, good morning. Like that, just to be cordial. So devotee does things and sets a good example by their, as we say in America, actions speak louder than words. Nobody likes when they see somebody who talks nice, but then when you see how they act, it's like, oh, come on. It's not measuring up. But you like it when you see somebody talks nice, but also behaves nicely. Then you feel good. Oh, very nice. Okay, then it also said, whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. So that was Prabhupada. How all these, like me, Westerners, why were we willing to follow Prabhupada? We saw his example. We saw how he was, whatever he was telling us to do, he was doing. Prabhupada was chanting. Prabhupada was getting up before the disciples. Prabhupada was also taking bath, giving class, writing books, managing. Prabhupada was working. Again, same thing with Prabhupada. It's not that Prabhupada was sitting back with 95 Rolls Royces, with girlfriends, and all the disciples were slaves. No. Prabhupada, by his example, he was doing it. There's in the early days, that devotees are lining up to go to the bathroom. Prabhupada's also in line behind the disciples. Back then, they didn't know any better. They didn't know any better. But Prabhupada was very, very patient, very tolerant. Prabhupada even showed the first female devotee how to put on a sari. Yeah. Prabhupada showed his first female disciple how to wear a sari. That's Prabhupada. Amazing, huh? Yes. So the only reason us Americans, Westerners, surrendered is because we saw Prabhupada's brilliant example. That was the only thing we saw. His purity, his sincerity, his surrender. That's what cracked our hard hearts. Okay, let's go now to the next section. So the next section is called Krishna's Obligations. That's a little funny. Krishna's Obligations, because actually, who can make God do anything? But you'll see why I used that title, Krishna's Obligations. Let's read it together. 1, 2, 3. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the 3 planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. For if ever I failed to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. So let's go over this point by point. So, son of Pritha, who is that? Arjuna. Very good. There is no work prescribed for me within the 3 planetary systems, because Krishna is God. He is the supreme authority. Okay? There is no prescribed duty for him. Then he says, nor am I in want of anything. And that's an important concept. Especially, like I mentioned, tonight is the night Krishna dances Rasa Leela. So at the end of the Rasa Leela section in Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami explains to Parikshit, there is no fault in Krishna's dancing Rasa Leela, because Krishna is Aptakam. Krishna is Atmaram. He's already self-satisfied. It's not that Krishna danced the Rasa Leela because he was lusty. No. Krishna danced the Rasa Leela only because he had promised the gopis a year earlier that he would satisfy their desires to have Krishna as their husband. Because all the young gopis for 1 month went into the cold water of the Yamuna, worshiped goddess Durga, known as Katyayani, and each gopi secretly was praying to goddess Durga, let me be married to Krishna. So then Krishna climbed a tree, stole their clothes, played with them, and Krishna knew. How does Krishna know? Krishna's in the heart. He knows everything. He knew that all the girls wanted him. Krishna said, wait 1 year, your desire will be fulfilled. That's the background of the Rasa Leela. One night, he dances with them. That night is a night of Brahma, which means it lasts millions of years. Okay? And Krishna behaved with them as if he was their husband. So Shukadev says, don't think anything funny. Krishna is Aptakam or Atmaram, self-satisfied. Any desire Krishna has is immediately fulfilled. Immediately. We're not like that. We have a desire, but what do we have to do? We have to work, we have to plan, we have to be patient. Then after some time, if we're fortunate, our desires comes true. But Krishna's not like that. Krishna says, oh, and boom, it manifests. Wouldn't you love that? I would like that. That I simply, like, say after the program, I'm tired. I don't want to have to drive an hour home. So if I was Krishna, I would just say, I want to be home. Boom, I'd be home. But I'm not Krishna. I'm not God. I have to get in the car and drive on the 91 freeway all the way home. That's why we're not God. We're not Opticom, and we're not Optiram. We're dependent. We read in the previous verse, a devotee is not dependent on any other living being. But everybody in the material world is dependent on someone. Your daughters are dependent on you, Krishna Kumar. Right? No Krishna Kumar, no college. Yes. Are they working? Okay. So, who's paying the bills? Okay, that's my point. Thank you. All right? So, nor am I wanting anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything. And yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. So even though Krishna doesn't have to do anything, doesn't need anything, doesn't want anything, still he says, I am engaged in prescribed duties. Then he says, why? There's a reason why. For if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, all men would follow my path, which would mean the whole world would become a complete mess. It's a mess already. It would become even more crazy if Krishna, when he comes in his various incarnations, especially even Krishna, if Krishna didn't engage in prescribed duties. When Krishna was in Dwarka, he got up early in the morning, before sunrise, Brahma Mahurta, an hour and a half before sunrise. Krishna would get up, leave the goddess of fortune in bed, and they were very angry when the rooster would crow, because that meant, oh, Krishna is leaving me now. Krishna would get up, wash his hands, feet, begin his meditation, and then gradually begin his morning ritual. Krishna was doing that as a householder to teach everyone, like Prabhupada says. So, just as Krishna got up every morning meditating on himself, should we imitate Krishna? Should we meditate on ourselves? No. Prabhupada says we should follow in his footsteps and meditate on Radha Krishna. There's a difference between following and imitating. We don't imitate Krishna, but we follow his example. We follow his footsteps. So Krishna is performing prescribed duties just to teach human society. Otherwise, it'll become a big chaos. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Yes, Krishna wants everyone to be happy and peaceful. But to be happy and peaceful, you have to be Krishna conscious. If you're not Krishna conscious, or if at least you don't follow the Vedic rules and regulations, you cannot be happy and peaceful. As I've told the story many times, that lady in Panama, Swamiji, can you give me peace? So I asked her, do you eat meat? Oh yes. I can't give you peace. Do you drink liquor? Oh yes. I said, I can't give you peace. Do you gamble? Oh yes. I said, lady, 3 strikes, you're out. How can I give you peace? You're doing things that automatically prevent you from being peaceful. How does peace start? You have to give up sinful life. Why do you think Prabhupada insisted on those 4 regulative principles? Without those 4 regulative principles, don't even start to talk about spiritual life. It's non-existent. Those 4 regulative principles is how you begin spiritual life. But no 4 regulative principles, you're not even considered civilized. So those 4 regulative principles, that's the beginning. If that's agreed to, then we can start to talk about spiritual life. No regulative principles? Nonsense. Complete nonsense. Okay, let's go to the next section. Verses 25 through 30. The difference between the learned and the ignorant. Let's read it together. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path, so as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to fruitive results of prescribed duties. A learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, almighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, and with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Well, well, well. After all this, Krishna still wants Arjuna to fight. All right, let's look at this section line by line. So, what's an ignorant person? He does his duties, being attached to the results. So therefore, an intelligent person does his duty, but is not attached to the results. The learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. Then, what does it say next? So as to not disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. So we never advocate laziness. Everyone should at least be engaged in their prescribed duties. No laziness. But rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. So that is what a spiritual master does. A spiritual master engages his disciples in activities, but those activities are so designed that gradually one becomes Krishna conscious. For instance, in Radharaman temple, the thing now is to make the temple, correct? So they're enlisting donations, they're asking for people to volunteer to do service. That's all good, because all those activities will gradually develop someone in Krishna consciousness. Good. So that's what a spiritual master does with his disciples. A disciple comes, maybe he's very expert in something. Good. The spiritual master says, oh, you have this expertise? He figures out some service by which he can use that expertise to serve Krishna. That's what it means to be a spiritual master. Oh, this disciple has this talent. All right, you do your talents paint pictures for Krishna. You're a good cook, go to the kitchen. There's so much service to do in the kitchen. So that's what a spiritual master does. Figures out what the person's proclivity is, engage it to serve Krishna. All right? So that's called the spirit of devotion. Now, next idea. The spirit soul bewildered by the influence of false ego. False ego means I am this body. I'm man, I'm woman, I'm American, I'm Indian. This is all false ego. Real ego is I'm servant of Krishna. That's it. That's real ego. I'm eternal servant of Krishna. False ego, something else. So that's a bewilderment for the soul, because I already said at the very beginning, what is the soul? The soul is part and parcel eternal servant of Krishna. That's our constitutional position. Anything else is a false designation. Thinks himself the doer of activities that are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. Yes, somebody who is very proud thinks, I did this, and I did this, and I did this. At best, you can say you were a cooperator. But actually, everything that's pointed out here is being done by the modes of nature. So if I just think, yes, look at what I did, that is simply pride. You can take a little credit, but one should understand, yes, actually, Krishna is the ability, and we'll learn that in chapter 7. Krishna is the ability in man. The devotee never thinks, I did this, I did this, I did. No, the devotee thinks, Krishna empowered me. Arjuna realized that after Krishna left. When Krishna left the planet, what happened to Arjuna's powers? All his powers were gone. Even his Gandiva bow didn't work anymore. He was given the task of protecting Krishna's wives, taking them out of Dwaraka. And Arjuna was defeated by some cowherd men. But actually those cowherd men were Krishna. But externally, Arjuna admitted to his brother, I was conquered by some cowherd men, the great Arjuna. So Arjuna realized, and he confessed to his brother, because Krishna has gone, all my powers are gone. I don't have any more of my powers. And the only thing that saved Arjuna was he remembered Bhagavd-gita. That's what he says at the end. Now let me remember the instructions of Govinda, because they are meant to solve all problems at all times. So the proud man never gives credit to Krishna. I did this. I am so wonderful. We will read in chapter 16 the definition of a demon. So much wealth do I have. Here is my enemy, and I've crushed him. Here is my other enemy, and I will crush him tomorrow. I am so aristocratic. I am so powerful. I am so wonderful. Sounds like somebody I'm seeing a lot on TV. Exactly. Yes. Go ahead. What? I can't hear what you... That may be true from one angle of vision, but basically why the Pandavas went through their things, Krishna is showing even my devotees, they don't have an easy life. But my devotees will overcome all obstacles by my grace. So Krishna uses his devotees to teach everybody else. That's the real point. Whether it be Prahlad, the Pandavas, Krishna puts them in trials and tribulations, but the devotee surrenders and overcomes all the difficulties so that Krishna can now use them as the example. That see how my devotee, it's not that I'm a devotee, everything is, I got limousine. No. Devotees, Haridas Thakur, beaten in 22 marketplaces. Jesus Christ crucified on the cross. Prabhupada for the first year, no success. Nothing. Nothing to show. So Krishna sometimes does that to devotees so that others will see that the devotees have passed an extreme examination. And then the devotee becomes glorious. Why do we read about the Pandavas? Because we see they went through all this. At the end, they came out successful, but they had how many years in exile? 13? 13 years in exile. They had to fight the war. They lost their wife. They lost everything. But in the end, they came out successful. Yes. 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 Why? Brahma Samhita verse. Famous verse in the Brahma Samhita. I'll look it up later. For a devotee, your karma is like this. It gets shrunk down. For instance, when you become a fully surrendered devotee, by your karma, you should have had your head chopped off. Instead, you're shaving up. You get a little nick. By your karma, your foot should have got cut off. Instead, in the kirtan, somebody steps on your foot. You pull. Prabhupada says you get a love tap from Krishna. Your karma is shrunk down. I think I've said it, but I'll say it just for the sake of answering your question. Once you take initiation, which is your formal surrender to Krishna, okay? At that moment, now you're no longer dealing with the material energy. You're dealing with Krishna directly. For those not surrendered, they're dealing with the material energy straight on. They're dealing with their karma. But once you surrender, as I said, initiation is the formal act. The real surrender is, my Lord, from this day forward, I'm yours. That's the real initiation. When that is a heart of heart realization. The initiation, the formal initiation comes at some point. But when the devotee is fully surrendered, the karma shrunk. Now whatever happens, it's between you and Krishna. And whatever happens, that's how the devotee sees. I'm not going to see this as my karma, but what is Krishna trying to teach me? Yes, Prabhu. No, he has a question. Exactly how it is stated in Bhagavatam. In the Satya Yuga, pretty much everybody's in the mode of goodness. People in Satya Yuga are naturally elevated. They have brilliant intelligence. They're pretty much in the mode of, there's hardly any sin. If there's no sin. Everybody's in the mode of goodness. That's why the recommended process is meditation in Satya Yuga. Because people are sufficient. And you're right. Kali Yuga, bad. And it gets worse and worse and worse and worse day by day. Except if you chant Hare Krishna. That's the only ticket. That's the only thing where you get, for instance, you go to the airport, now they have that TSA line, pre-TSA, okay? The regular TSA line, right? But the pre-TSA is very quick. Or same way with the flight attendants and the pilot. They don't have to wait in the line. They just go shoot, 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 shoot. Right? So a devotee is like that. He gets on he still has to go through the line, but it's very quick. Everybody else, long line. Okay? Let's continue. So we were talking about thinking the doer. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth does not engage in the senses and sense gratification. So this is how you tell how somebody's advanced. You can tell somebody's advanced by how much time they spend doing devotional service. Somebody is not advanced. He does a little devotional service, and he does also sense gratification. But somebody who is advanced, they do hardly any material activities. 90% or more is all devotional activities. That's what it means to take sannyas. To take sannyas means no more sense gratification, no more material activities. As much as possible every day, I'm going to do devotional activities. That's the real meaning of sannyas. 100%, all day, every day, engaged in either hearing, chanting, worshiping, praying, doing service to Krishna. The householder does some, but he also does some material activities. You can't help it because you're in that position. You got a wife, you got a family. Just like, let's take Krishna Kumar. Krishna Kumar cannot spend the whole day in the temple, even if he wanted to. He can't. He has to do his prescribed duties, right? Huh? But you cannot do it. But you cannot do it all day, right? You have to go to office, right? But a sannyasi has no office. Sannyasi has to be all day doing devotional activities. Okay. Okay, knowing the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. So that's, you know, all those people. They're out there every day. That's what they are. They're attached to the modes of nature. But the wise should not unsettle them. Although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Yes, they're only engaged in all these activities because they don't know about devotional activities, which you do. So that's the difference. They don't know any better. But you know better. So therefore you have to, as much as possible, engage in devotional activities. Surrendering all your works unto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. So throughout Bhagavad-gita, after so much, Krishna will again come back to this point. Fight. Because that is what Krishna wants Arjuna to do. Fight the Kauravas. What does Krishna want us to do? Fight Maya. Fight ignorance. Fight material sense gratification. We also have to fight. We're just like Arjuna. We can read Bhagavad-gita, and when Krishna says fight, our fight is against ignorance. Our fight is against sense gratification. Our fight is against sinful activities. That's our fight. And therefore we have to be fixed up. Everybody chant the Maha Mantra of you can do business here in Placentia. But if you in New York City, Wall Street, you can do maximum business there. Of course, nowadays we have the internet and all that, but it used to be. Why do you think all these people are every day going to Wall Street? Like my brother, he used to go to Wall Street every day. Because that Wall Street is set up to have maximum facility to engage in business, make money. So that's why Prabhupada had his temples. Prabhupada created the temples so that there would be maximum facility to do devotional service. Because on our own, very difficult. It's a real struggle. But if there's a temple, it's a better facility, more inducement. Same way, you go to the Dham. Why should we go to the Dhams? Again, there'll be a much better atmosphere. Okay, so let's go to the next section. Section verses number 31 through 35. Final lessons on karma and duty. Let's read this section together, please. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous." So let's look at this section carefully, line by line. So the first point, execute your duties according to Krishna's injunctions. So that's why we read Bhagavad-gita, and that's why we have a spiritual master. And that's why we follow the example of previous saintly persons. So three things: Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. That's how we execute our duties. Then we have to follow Krishna's teachings faithfully, with, without envy, and become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. Then he gives a warning. But those out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. So the root is envy. That is the original sin, envy. Envy means, why should I serve God? I want to be served. I want to enjoy. Envy is the beginning. It all starts from envy. I rebel. Even in the Christian Bible, same concept. Lucifer, Satan, was one of the topmost angels of God, but he became envious. He challenged. They had a war. Lucifer, Satan, got a bunch of angels to fight against God in the Christian Bible. Who do you think won? God won. And so Lucifer and all those people who followed him were sent to hell. Why? Because and there's a classic line by the devil. Because the question is asked, Satan, you were originally one of God's most confidential angels. And what does the devil say? Better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. That's envy. That is the classic definition of envy. That I'd rather think that I'm an independent enjoyer, even though I'm suffering like anything. But surrender to God? Never. That's demoniac mentality. I'll tolerate all kinds of suffering in this material world. I'll take birth after birth, but surrender to God? Never. I'd rather be king of hell. That's what it means to be a demon. Ravan, Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, that's their sampradaya. And it all starts from envy. But the devotee is free from envy. Why? The devotee, Lord, I am your surrendered soul. Arjuna, what does he say? Please instruct me. Satan never says, please instruct me. No. Duryodhana never said to Krishna, please instruct me. Never. Never did he, no, because he's envious. He's envious of the Pandavas. And being envious of the Pandavas means being envious of Krishna. Why? Because Krishna is always on the side of the Pandavas. Yes. You could say from one angle of vision. I think a better way, I wouldn't use those terms. I would say it was the battle between righteousness and unrighteousness. After all, Yudhishthir is Dharmaraj, the emblem of piety and religion. I wouldn't use materialism and spiritualism because that's a different level. But I think it would be better to say righteousness and unrighteousness or evil. Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra, from the start, their whole platform was unlawful. It was based on greed, jealousy, and envy. Right from the start. Okay? And the Pandavas, who should have from the beginning at least should have had at least their own kingdom. They had Indraprastha. So even if Duryodhana and they had their kingdom, Hastinapur, if they had allowed Yudhishthir to at least have Indraprastha, their own, there would not have been a war. But notice, when it came down to it, what did Duryodhana say? I won't even give, because they asked, okay, just give us 5 villages. They were supposed to get their kingdom back. That was the deal. Okay? But when it came time to pay up, no, I won't even give them the amount of land the size of a needle point. That's envy, that's jealousy, that's evil, that's wrong. Okay? That's why they lost everything. If they had agreed, yes, Pandavas, well, okay, we won't give you, we'll just give you your kingdom. But what would have happened? See, this is why Duryodhana couldn't agree. Why? Here's why. Yudhishthir and his brothers, their Indraprastha was so nice, everyone from Hastinapur would have left Duryodhana and lived with Yudhishthir. And Duryodhana knew that they were so ideal. Everybody would have been much more, so they would have said, Duryodhana, forget it, we're not staying with you. We're all going to go and join Yudhishthir. And Duryodhana knew that. So that's why he wasn't going to agree. Because by agreeing, he knows, I'm going to lose anyway, so better I fight them. Good enough? Jai. I like this new pujari we have. Very nice. Okay, let's finish up. So those who out of envy disregard these teachings. So that's why somebody rejects Bhagavd-gita. It's all because of envy. I don't want to surrender. I don't want to be Krishna's servant. So that's why we disregard Bhagavd-gita. Now this next section is really good. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. For everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the 3 modes. So you each have a unique nature. That nature has been developed for thousands of lifetimes. It's not overnight that you're shaker. You have been shaker gradually developing over many, many lifetimes. Same way with Kundan. It's not that Kundan became... No, after many, 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 many lifetimes, now he's Kundan. So his nature, your nature, different. I'm not saying either one's bad, but you have a different nature, different personality. He has different. Kakanaji has his nature. You 3 are different. Even you boys, even the 3 Garmalkar boys, am I right? They're not all the same. Madhava is one way, Govind's one way, and the best of them, Mukund, is one way. Am I right? They each have a nature. Every one of us has a nature. Even the 5 Pandavas. Bhima's nature was Bhima. Yudhishthir was Yudhishthir. Arjuna was Arjuna. All 3 were married to Draupadi, but according to the nature, Arjuna was her favorite. Arjuna's nature. Duryodhana had his nature. Compare Duryodhana's nature and Yudhishthir. Completely opposite. Mirror opposite natures. Yudhishthir is so pious to a fault. And Duryodhana doesn't even think twice about doing something cunning and ruthless. Doesn't even think twice about it. All he needs is a little encouragement from Shakuni. Yeah, let's do that. Whereas Yudhishthir, he considers everything. Wait. Right? So many times, Bhima goes to Yudhishthir, give me the word. I'll go right now. I'll smash them all. Just let me loose. Yudhishthir is telling him, no. calm down. Calm down. The time is not right. So many times in the forest, every so often Bhima would say, give me the word, I'll go right now, I'll kill all of them. What does Yudhisthira say? Okay, there was the incident. They caught Duryodhana, remember? Duryodhana had this plan with the cows. He wanted to show off his opulence, right? And what happened? They got captured by the Gandharvas, right? And so so Duryodhana was turned over. They could have done something to Duryodhana right there and then. What did they do? Let him go. Yes? No, the reason why he did the gambling was because he wanted to show that he was subordinate to Dhritarashtra, recognizing him as the king. That's the only reason he did it. He felt obliged. Here is my superior. He wants me to engage in this. I should thereby do it. Yeah, that whole gambling thing is very complicated. It's not an easy thing. But if you read carefully, his mentality, and because he was questioned like that, he said, no, I don't want to show myself as some kind of upstart. He wants to always submit as he surrendered. So Dhritarashtra wants this, I'm going to comply. That's why I gave this expression. He's pious to a fault. And that's why Draupadi got angry sometimes at him. Okay? But that's Yudhisthira's nature. Yudhisthira's nature is, no, I have to do the right thing, no matter how difficult it is, I have to do the right thing. And in the end, who won the kingdom? Yudhisthira. Good? All right. So, everybody has a nature which you have accumulated according to the modes of nature after many, many lifetimes. And then what it says, what can repression accomplish? So in Krishna consciousness, we do not deny anyone their nature. It's not that, like, I'll give you an example. I had been a devotee a couple of years. So then I met some people that used to know me before I was a devotee. So they thought that I would be something different. They said, you're the same Nikki. I said, of course. It's not that you become Krishna conscious, you become something else. I'm still my nature. I am who I am. Right? I would still have these different traits, but instead of it being material, I'm using them for Krishna. So it's not that you become something different. No, you are who you are. But when you engage your nature in Krishna consciousness, it becomes very, very nice. It becomes pleasurable. If you would see me before becoming a devotee, you would not tolerate me. You wouldn't stay 1 minute. It would still be me, but you wouldn't tolerate. But at least you tolerate me because I'm a devotee. That's the only reason why you do this. So you all have a nature. Just like, take for instance, Mahatma and Gadadhar. They're God brothers, but Mahatma's nature, Gadadhar's nature, two different things. I love them both, and they're both wonderful in their own way, but Mahatma's nature, completely different. And it's not that Mahatma should try to be Gadadhar and Gadadhar should try to be Mahatma. It won't work. Right? It's not that Kakani can be Ram Singhani. Ram Singhani has his nature, you have your nature. It would be impossible if I'd say, Krishna said, I want you to be Ram Singh. You couldn't do it because you have a nature. I have a nature. Everybody has a nature. That's not the issue. The issue is, how do you utilize your nature? That's the key. Not that what's your nature, no. How are you using it? Are you using it for Krishna, or are you using it for sense gratification? Poor example. Say, for instance, Trump would become a devotee. I know it's not possible, but just say. So let's say I preach to Trump, and I tell him, okay, Trump, now you got to have a bead bag, and you have to give up being like this. You have to follow the four. He would still be obnoxious Trump, but he would be a devotee version. You understand? So he still have his nature, but he would be using it for Krishna. So we're all like that. Okay, so what can repression accomplish? Your children, they have a nature. You're not going to repress their nature, but you're going to engage them and develop their natures so that they become Krishna conscious. His nature and her nature are different. That's okay. But you're going to make them devotees, right? Yes, Mr. Mahatma? You're going to make them a devotee? Good. What's that? Yeah, of course. Okay. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. All right, so there is this phrase, niyamagraha. Niyamagraha means either following the rules and regulations too much or not following them sufficiently. So we're not fanatics. We follow the rules and regulations as far as possible, but we understand the real object is to become Krishna conscious. So we don't do unnecessarily austerities, but we do austerities provided they help us become Krishna conscious. So we're not going to be stumbled by attachment or aversion. Attachment means, say I like to do a particular activity for Krishna. Good. But sometimes you won't be able to utilize that activity. So it's not that that's the only thing I can do. I can only do this activity. If I'm not going to be able to do this activity, then I'm not going to do any Krishna conscious things. That means you're too attached. So you can't do this service, do this service. The devotee doesn't care so much. If I can't do this service, let me do some other service. Say, two ladies. So they both want to cook for Krishna. But the temple says, no, we only need one cook. So it's not that the other devotee says, oh, she gets to cook and not me, I'm out of here. No. The devotee that didn't get a chance to cook, she'll say, okay, I'll help clean. You see the idea? You can't say you're attached to leading the kirtan, but sometimes you don't get the chance to lead kirtan. Okay, I'm not going, I'm going home. No. Let me support. Let me do something else. So the devotee does not let the attachment disrupt his service attitude. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another's path is dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because the whole purpose is to become Krishna conscious. So if you're giving up your prescribed duty and doing somebody else's duty, you may not necessarily by that become Krishna conscious. So always the devotee keeps in mind the goal, the objective. The goal and objective is to become Krishna conscious. Everybody chant the Maha Mantra. Yes, Dr. Garmakar. Yeah. Well, if by following other paths you become Krishna conscious, that's okay. If you actually become Krishna conscious. Because again, I don't know if you were here in the beginning. In the beginning, we were talking about being engaged in Krishna consciousness is the topmost spiritual activity. But to answer your, now that I think about your question, somebody does Krishna consciousness, but not independently. There's guru. So the devotee doesn't do anything without the sanction and permission of guru. Okay? So if somebody wants to do something, he checks first with guru. How's that? Good. Yes, sir.
So, can you explain in detail where it says that even though faultily, then another duty is perfectly? This sentence.
Yes.
It is far better to discharge or prescribe duty, even though faultily.
Yes. Because your duties come from your nature. That's where your duties come from your nature. Remember we talked about your acquired nature. So, you should do your prescribed duties according to your nature. Don't do something that's not according to your nature. You may think that you're doing it perfectly. You may think that, okay, I'm going to do this other thing, and I'm going to do it perfectly. Krishna is saying, no. Even because later on in chapter 18, Krishna says, in every endeavor, there's some mistake anyway. Okay? So this excuse that, well, I don't want to do my prescribed duties because I'm doing it faultily, that's not a reason. The emphasis here is stick to your prescribed duty. Now, Krishna Kumar, once you become a devotee, what is always your prescribed duty?
So, Krishna.
And chant, yes. Yes, chant. Chant and do service. So, for a devotee, his prescribed duty is think of Krishna and execute Krishna consciousness. Now, even in that activity, there'll be mistakes. So it's not that the devotee says, you know what? My guru has said to chant 16 rounds, but I'm really not good at it, so I'm going to do something else. No. The guru has told you to chant 16 rounds. Even you're doing it faultily, you stick to the order of the spiritual master. And you don't do something else thinking, well, I can do this other thing perfectly. So the key, I'm talking now once you become a devotee. The key is to stick to the order of the spiritual master. I'll tell you a good story. In South India, there was a Brahmana. So his guru told him, every day you have to read 18 chapters of Bhagavd-gita. That is your instruction. He was illiterate. So what's he going to do? His guru has told him, every day he has to read 18 chapters of Bhagavd-gita, but he doesn't know how to read. So he may think, okay, I'm illiterate, I'll do something else. No. Even though he's illiterate, So what does he do? He takes the book and he tries. Sometimes the book is upside down. He doesn't know any different. But he's trying. He's trying to execute the order of the spiritual master. That is why Lord Chaitanya embraced him and said, you are the real scholar of Bhagavad-gita. That's my explanation of this. There was no chance of him reading Bhagavad-gita, so he's doing his prescribed duty faultily, but that order of the spiritual master is all important. Another story. Parashuram, his father was a Brahmana. So his father's name was Jamadagni. Jamadagni's wife once was sent to get something. So when she went out to get something, she saw a Gandharva. And for a second, her mind became attracted by the Gandharva. So when she came back, her husband, because he's a great Brahmin, knew that within her mind she had become unchaste. You follow? So Jamadagni told his other sons, kill your mother. They said no. Jamadagni told Parashuram, kill your mother. Immediately killed her. Jamadagni said, okay, my son, thank you. What benediction would you like? Bring her back to life without any remembrance of this issue. Jamadagni brought her back to life. But Parashuram executed the order of his father. He knew how powerful his father was. He did not hesitate. That's another story we can give. Ramachandra, you all know Ramachandra. How the people of Ayodhya begged Ram. They begged him, come back. Bharat even said, I'll take your place in the forest. You come back and be king. The whole village of Ayodhya came when Ram first left with Sita and Lakshman. They all arrived trying to convince him, you don't have to do this, come back. What did Ram say? No. I must execute the word of my father. And look what happened. There was so much problems, but the order of the father, the spiritual master, has to be executed. So Garmakar boys, the order of the father has to be accepted. You like that, Subhash? That's the best way I can understand this. Because everything in spiritual life is dependent on the order. Prabhupada's the same way. Prabhupada is now on the verge of his 70th birthday. Prabhupada is in Vrindavan. What more could you want? You're in your old age, you're in Vrindavan, executing Krishna consciousness. But what does Prabhupada say? No. My guru told me I have to preach. I have to preach in English. So even though he's in Vrindavan, and he was recognized by the people of Vrindavan as a bona fide sadhu. Prabhupada spent some years in Vrindavan. All the people recognized, here's genuine sadhu, not some flake. He had a good reputation as being, but what is Prabhupada thinking? I have to somehow print the books. That's when he started writing Bhagavatam, was in Vrindavan. Because all he could think about, Bhakti Siddhanta told me to preach. Prabhupada tried to preach in India, nobody wanted it. He even had his first ISKCON in Jhansi called League of Devotees. But it fizzled. So that's when Prabhupada decided, I'm going to the West. And Prabhupada said, mostly they think of London, but Prabhupada said, I'm thinking of New York.
Last sentence here.
Yes.
Instruction is better.
Yes.
Then engaging in another's duty.
Yes. Because, same way with Arjuna. Krishna told Arjuna, fight and don't be attached to success or failure. That is the true follower. Not dependent on the results of the activities. So, same way with Prabhupada. On the boat, 2 heart attacks. But he stuck with it. 1 year in New York, as almost 1 year, nothing was happening. Almost for 1 year, nothing. Finally, something happened. He got that 26 Second Avenue. So that's the emblem. The devotee is thinking, let me die executing my prescribed duty. You've all heard of Jayapataka Swami, right? You see his condition after the stroke, right? So, all the doctors, all the disciples are telling him, Maharaj, you should just retire now. Jayapataka says, no. I'm going to continue to travel and preach. Let me die traveling and preaching. Prabhupada's last days. Okay, you've seen the video. Prabhupada is emaciated. He's not eating. The skin is, okay? So, the idea comes to do a program touring Vrindavan on bullock cart. Prabhupada said, yes, I want to do parikram. And all the other devotees are saying, what? Because they knew if Prabhupada would go on that bullock cart ride, he would die. But Prabhupada wanted to go. He wanted to go. Because Prabhupada had that same mood. Let me die going out. But then when all the disciples freaked out, he said, okay, I don't want you guys to be in too much. They freaked out. Sannyasis, GBCs, they were all crying. Prabhupada, what are you doing to us? So, Prabhupada said, you're upset? Okay, I won't go on the bullock cart ride. But he was willing to go. Prabhupada was not attached to his body. He was ready to, a real Kshatriya, a real honest-to-goodness Kshatriya, does not retreat from the battle. He fights, and even he dies in the fight. Because that was one of the things Krishna said. Arjuna, you fight and you win, you get earth. You die in the fight, you're going to heaven. Not that Arjuna should take sannyas. That's repeated message of Bhagavd-gita. Fight, fight, fight. Do your prescribed duty. Our prescribed duty, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay? So we'll have to finish the last section when you come back from your yatra. Yes, Maharaj.
Why people are hesitant? I tell my friends to chant. They say I will do half round, 1 round. They can do 16 rounds. Why they cannot do it?
Okay. Here, you have not followed something that I have been teaching since the beginning. All my people, Raman knows, all my people, Ghosh, Mehta, Parekh, I never told them 16 rounds. I told them 1 round. You tell anybody you have to do 16 rounds. It's like if I tell you, okay, tomorrow you have to do 100 push-ups. Are you going to do that? So the idea is all my followers. Right, Dr. Garmalkar, didn't I preach like that? Huh? You do 1 but you become fixed up. That no excuse, 1 every day. Then 2. But without fail. You have to build strength. They're not even doing 1? Move on. Don't waste your time. If they're not interested, move on. You've seen, there's this thing, moveon.org. It's very famous. So I'm the same way. If they're not interested, don't waste your time. Yes. It was his prescribed duty, but it was still sinful because Narada showed him, because the Narada said, the hunter said to Narada, well, this is how I was taught by my father. He didn't think there was anything wrong with it. But that doesn't mean there was nothing wrong with it. It's still sinful. He didn't think it was sinful. So Narada said, look what's going to happen to you in your next life. The guy got freaked out because Narada showed him what is going to be the sinful reaction. Okay? So, yeah, people can say what's their prescribed duty, but we have to show them what is the real prescribed duty. Someone may say, my prescribed duty is to go to Las Vegas and gamble. But that doesn't mean, you've heard me give this example. So in Christian religion, Muslim religion, they're allowed to eat meat, right? But that doesn't mean they're excused from the karma, okay? Because people who eat meat, what happens? They get all kinds of diseases. Their religion didn't absolve them from getting cancer or coronary heart disease. Follow? So just because it's somebody's religion or somebody's duty, you're still going to get the reaction. So we learned tonight, we should not unsettle them. But if they're ready to hear something, we can give them a little higher knowledge. You do that with your patients, don't you? Yeah. Well, that's the impersonal understanding. That's impersonalism. So, get them to somehow start chanting, give them prasadam, give them Prabhupada's books. Let's see if we can take it from there. All right? Yes? I bless you. Okay?
My very good friend, and I want him to chant.
I bless you. I bless you to chant. I also want you to chant. Okay. Shall we have Arti? Mahatma Ji, I want you to... You're going to do? No, I want him to sing. Where? Dr. Gamakar.
Let them lead out.
No. Hey, do your prescribed duty.
Maharaji, my rule here is that we cannot do Aarti in short time.
No, she's going to do it.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. You cannot do it in short time,
No, okay. So,
do it at it.
yeah, she's going to do it.
Yes, you have to gracefully.
Mahatma, you know how much I love your kirtan. Rama, you like his kirtan? Yeah? See? All right. Let's do. Where's Govind?